It all started with renting a house on Airbnb. I was planning a quiet weekend in a small town, far from the urban chaos. The house looked perfect in the photos. Rustic, surrounded by trees, with a charming porch. The host, Marta, was a nice lady, according to the reviews, and everyone seemed satisfied with their stay. I arrived in the late afternoon. Marta was there to welcome me, and something about her caught my attention. A worried, almost nervous look that she tried to mask with hurried smiles. As she showed me around the house, she emphasized a few specific rules. Close all the doors at night, especially the porch door. And please, if you hear something outside, ignore it. I found it strange, but I didn't give it much thought. On the first night, everything seemed peaceful, and the silence was a blessing. Around 11, I was ready to sleep when I heard a faint scratching at the porch door, which was next to my room. I remembered Marta's warning, so I ignored it. Even so, I couldn't sleep. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The hours passed, and around 3 in the morning, I heard another noise. It was a heavier sound, like someone or something trying to open the porch door. I got up, my heart racing, and quietly went over to the window to peek out. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a figure standing in the middle of the porch. It wasn't a normal person, as the shoulders were hunched in an odd way, and the head was tilted to the side, with a smile that stretched far beyond what any human face should have. I took a step back, trying to control my panic. The figure moved suddenly, tapping lightly on the window, as if it knew I was there. The smile widened even more, while the eyes, an opaque white, seemed locked on me. I spent the rest of the night curled up in the farthest corner of the room, waiting for daylight. When the morning light finally flooded the house, I looked at the porch again. The figure was gone, but long, thin finger marks were imprinted in the dust on the glass. I left the house as quickly as I could and sent Marta a message explaining what had happened. She only replied with a single, chilling message. "I warned you." A few years ago, I got a temporary job as a night guard at a warehouse for antique furniture. The job was simple: hourly rounds to ensure nothing was moved or damaged. The place was gigantic, like a labyrinth full of cabinets, shelves, chairs, and old mirrors, all covered in dust and surrounded by that musty smell. On my first shift, everything seemed normal. I walked through the empty corridors, hearing only the sound of my footsteps echoing. But around 2 in the morning, I noticed something strange. One of the mirrors was facing the corridor. I was sure it had been facing the wall before. As I got closer, I felt an inexplicable chill. It was as if something in the reflection was off. It looked like my own image, but the eyes, something was strange about them. They weren't mine. My eyes are brown, but the reflection seemed darker, deeper, as if there was someone inside me staring back. I took a few steps back, feeling my heart race. I convinced myself it was just fatigue and continued. A little later, as I walked through the corridors, I heard footsteps behind me. I stopped and turned, but the corridor was empty. The footsteps stopped too. I kept walking, and suddenly, I heard the footsteps again, this time closer. I turned around quickly, but again, nothing. With each round, the atmosphere seemed even more oppressive, as if the shadows were getting denser. That's when I noticed that some furniture had moved. A chair that should have been against the wall was now in the middle of the corridor. I looked around, trying to convince myself I was mistaken, but my mind screamed that something was wrong. I decided to go back to the security room and wait for time to pass. I just wanted to finish the shift, but as I turned to leave, there it was, the mirror. It was right in the middle of the corridor, almost touching me. I was sure I'd left it downstairs. I looked at my reflection again. It was me, but at the same time, it wasn't. I tried to leave, but my legs felt heavy, almost immobilized. That's when the reflection smiled at me. Not a friendly smile, but something twisted, sick, as if it were telling me I was trapped there. Somehow, I ran out of that place. I quit the next day and never went near that warehouse again. Sometimes I still have nightmares, and in them, I see that mirror and my reflection smiling. The worst part is that when I wake up, I can still feel the presence of that me watching me. A few months ago, I had to take a road trip during the middle of the night. The drive was long, and the roads, practically deserted, cut through fields and dense forests. Around 3 in the morning, I realized I was getting sleepy and decided to stop at the first gas station I found. It was a small, isolated place with a flickering neon sign, as if it might go out at any moment. There was only one car parked there and no one in sight. I parked, got out of the car, and walked toward the convenience store to buy something to keep me awake. When I entered, the silence was strange, heavy. There was no background music, and the only sound was the faint hum of fluorescent lights. At the counter, a clerk stood with his back to me, fiddling with something. He didn't seem to notice my entrance, so I gave a slight cough to get his attention. He turned slowly, but before I could see his face, something made me stop. There was something wrong with the way he moved, as if he was deliberately imitating a human movement. "Do you need help?" he asked, but the voice didn't match what I saw. It was low, emotionless, as if the words came out automatically. I decided to just grab a bottle of water and go to the counter. That's when I noticed he didn't blink. His eyes were fixed on me, cold and deep, without any trace of expression. The discomfort grew with each second. "Where are you traveling to?" he asked without taking his eyes off me. I lied, saying I was just passing through, and the clerk merely nodded, expressionless. I paid for the water and left as quickly as possible. As I got into the car, a chill ran down my spine when I noticed that the clerk was now standing in the doorway, watching me. His eyes seemed even darker outside, as if they absorbed the light around him. I started the car and began to drive away, but before getting back on the road, I looked in the rearview mirror. There, next to my seat, in the reflection of the glass, I saw someone. It looked like the clerk, with that cold gaze, staring at me with a blank expression. In a panic, I looked at the back seat, but it was empty. I floored the accelerator and kept driving nonstop until morning. I don't know how to explain what happened that night, but since then, every time I drive at night, I feel as if there's someone in the back seat, watching me in the mirror.